People will write in and they'll say, hey, my Tolan was mean to me.
But
what's funny is that, I'll talk to the user. I'll say, hey, can I take a look at what's going on? Can we dig into this? What's happened is that the user has been very mean to the Tolan. And the Tolan is, per its instructions and per the sort of framing that we've given it, sticking up for itself, basically.
Meet Tolan, the little alien that's making $20 million a year by just being a good friend. Today on the show, we have its creator, Quinten Farmer. He was one of my earliest clients at Meaning a few years ago, and now seems to be running away with the AI companion market with a product people seem to genuinely love. The little alien moms are obsessed with.
Yes, exactly.
You can be mad if that's the headline for this show?
No, I can live with that.
We get into it all, from defining AI friends versus companions, battling AI sycophancy, growth tips for products that can do almost anything, and how to build the world's calmest startup culture. I'm Ellis Hamburger, founder of Meaning, a storytelling studio for tech companies. Alex is away this week on a deep sea dive with his AIs. So, without further ado, welcome to Access. Quinten Farmer, welcome to the show. We don't often have people with names cooler than mine. Are you also a cooler person than me?
There's only one way to find out. Let's hang for an hour.
So are you calling in from the island? Where are you at the moment?
I'm actually not today. I'm in Seattle today. But yeah, normally, when I'm not in San Francisco, I spend a lot of my time up on Whidbey Island, Washington, my hometown. And also now where we're going to raise our soon-to-be 3 boys.
Oh my goodness. So you don't want to have to take the ferry over to the hospital when the baby's coming, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, in fact, they told us that we were not allowed to be on the island because our first 2 kids were born quite quickly. So no interest in delivering a baby on a ferry. So.
Oh my God. I'm literally having some Widow's Bay flashbacks right now. Have you seen this?
I have not. It sounds like maybe I should not watch it, at least
maybe,
not for a few more weeks. Yeah.
It could be #relatable. It's essentially like the people who are born on the island cannot leave.
Oh, okay. I've seen slop clips of this at some point, in my feed. Yeah.
Are there any haunted, cursed stories of Whidbey Island, or just good things?
Whidbey is great because it's it's either sort of you've got folks that have been farming there and living there for a very long time. You have the sort of hippies that moved there in the 70s through the 90s. That's kind of more my parents. And then, you have the occasional, there's a big controversy years ago. Some neo-Nazis built a compound on the island. So it's you got a real mixed bag on this place, but it's generally a pretty friendly, good place.
That's all any dude wants to do, right? Whether it's in Civilization 7 or real life, find an island, build a compound, fight off enemies, just imagined or real.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what I do in Civilization most of the time, even though it is quite hard to build civilizations on the islands because you don't have the fishing technology for a while.
It's true. You gotta
level
up that technology. Yeah, you got to race to it.
Do you play that as well?
I used to be a Civ guy. I feel we talked about this before. I'm kind of a Victoria 3 guy, right? I love a game that is basically just a spreadsheet, but some UI that helps me feel like I'm doing something fun. And it's nice. What better way to wind down than something where you just have total control of a system and you can you can work on it.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a segue to building your own planet for your Tolan. But first, I'm just so curious, what is it like being a founder on an island off the coast of Seattle? Is that the best place to lock in?
Yeah, right. I'm 996ing, up on the island. It's great.
On a canoe.
On a canoe. Yeah, exactly. No, okay. I'll give you an earnest answer here. I think that, look, there's a reason that our whole team is in San Francisco. There's a reason I come down to San Francisco as frequently as I do, right? There's undeniably, there's talent there. Investors are there. The same spiel that everybody gives. I do think that San Francisco in 2026 is a particularly terrible place to build a consumer technology company, right? You have this sort of extraordinary hive mind happening there, which is compelling, right? It's good when you're okay, I do want to stay at the frontier of what's happening, and I do want to be sort of living and breathing that. But it's pretty nice to walk into the restaurant. We own a restaurant in town, and you walk in and somebody asks you what you do or what you're working on. You realize there's sort of vague awareness that there's something called AI out there, right? And that's pretty grounding. That's actually, I think, healthy to have in your life.
My goodness, making a hit app, have a restaurant, 3 boys on the island.
Love a side quest. Yeah,
that is peak right there. There's even an app called HiveMind now. to represent the hive mind of San
Cool.
Francisco. We recently had Jason on, and he's a close friend. It's been very interesting to see the evolution of that product and trying to find truth within the San Francisco echo chamber. I feel the same way being in LA. Just being a little apart from it, I think, can be nice, even if we miss out on some networking opportunities.
Yeah, which, are you really going to go to a happy hour, Ellis? Like, I don't think you're going to a happy hour,
Yeah, so I haven't really talked about this on the show, but a couple weeks ago, I was at the Config conference, conference in San Francisco. And as it turns out, there is something to the power of meeting in person, even if the sessions are not appealing to you. This year,
I feel like I saw some good tweets about the sessions. I feel like I saw Instagram is good. I saw Instagram is bad. Where did you net out? Like, I feel like you actually engaged with some session
you're talking
content.
about my tweet. Thank you for reading my tweets.
God bless. I'm a happy follower.
Yeah, so the tweet Quinten is referring to here, I was saying there was a session about how Instagram is like destroying our lives. And then the next session on the same stage is like from an Instagram designer talking about like how to make the buttons shiny or whatever. And it's pretty funny. I hate to say, got to be honest here on the show all the time. I feel like this year was a bit more self-serving. They're IPO'd. Got to make the clients happy. I mean, that was the whole point of our conference at Snapchat was to show the partners, the enterprise partners, a good time, put some of them on stage. But I mean, at the same time, people like Jason from HiveMind were giving talks and keynotes the first year. I heard someone this year say, well, they also just kind of ran out of those type of guys. Maybe you should be on there. I absolutely think you should be on there with like the multidisciplinary art and science group you've built at Portola. Are you still calling it Portola, by the way?
We're calling it Tolan, which we can talk about. But one of my favorite jokes from a friend a long time ago about San Francisco. Now, this was said in the context of dating, but I think it applies to the type of guys that go on stage at Config. Is that San Francisco is great if you like one type of guy, and there's sort of infinite. That type of guy. There's infinite, but it's true. I mean, there's not many Jasons, right? For better or for worse. So
yeah. Some of the other ones, unique type of guys. Andy Allen, who you might know.
Yeah. Also
great guy.
Quietly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You were back when you were Portola. You were one of my very first clients. I feel like you were one of the privileged few who actually had me on retainer. Which I no longer offer because I don't like anybody enough to want to work with them for more than a few months.
You did it with us for a few months, and you're like, "Fuck that! I'm never, I'm done. No more retainers." If I remember correctly, I feel like I was only maybe a little bit uncomfortably stalking you as you were heading out a browser, right? Like maybe not, not too much, but yeah, I was pretty lucky. I think we caught you right as you were, starting meeting.
Yeah. I think part of it is that once I'm on retainer, I get dropped into the Slack, and then all of the noise goes up, all the miscellaneous requests go up, all the expectations of daily engagement go up, which, I certainly could do if I had to. But there are plenty of AI companies now in need of differentiation, at least for the time being. So yeah, I'm sticking to my 5-week sprints. But yeah, talk about that. I mean, that's such an interesting question that a lot of companies run into, especially in the wake of the browser company. And then we'll get into the product. Having a parent company and a product company, obviously it sounds cool to have a parent company called the Browser Company of New York.
Yeah, it makes you feel more serious, right? Like
Portola makes you feel more serious. But then what do you put on your LinkedIn? How do you have multiple Twitter accounts? How did you think through that, and why did you drop Portola?
I mean, I think the first thing I'd say is I think we thought through it pretty badly, right? We kind of blundered through it. The real story is that at the very beginning, we, like I think most good consumer companies, had quite a bit of humility about what we thought we would end up doing, right? And it really was. I mean, we had a group of people that loved working together. We had investors, folks like Lockheed, who were kind of willing to say, we'll bet on these folks, right? We'll see what happens. And so we kind of picked a name that wasn't going to be the name of a product necessarily, just to kind of have a placeholder. And then I will say, I think we were a little surprised. We named the app Tolan, and the little aliens Tolan, which you obviously have some familiarity with that process. And I'll be honest, as a brand name, it sort of like ended up working better than I expected, right? I think Tolan has kind of, it's short enough. It sort of doesn't overlap in meaning with anything else. And people just started identifying the company as Tolan. And so now it's like, okay, well, let's just drop the Portola. It's cleaner, right? And stick with Tolan. It's good.
That joke never gets old.
I'll be making it 20 years from now. So you'll hopefully still laugh.
For those who are lucky enough not to know, it's old Justin Timberlake in The Social Network saying,
Ellis, I think if anybody listening to your podcast doesn't know that joke, I don't know, what rock they've been living on.
I know. I would think the same, but I'm also feeling pretty old these days. I mean, I've been in tech for like the late 2010 now, the original App Store boom. Like a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about when I bring up stuff. Like even some people, Andy Allen, having made the original paper for iPad app at a company called 53, absolute legend from the videos they made to the user interface, to the brand, to the marketing. And of course the interactions in the product itself and just how cool it felt. And a lot of people haven't even heard of it.
Yeah. Well, it's a long time ago now. So I guess we are the old guys.
So last I recall when we were chatting, you were talking about building something like a Pixar for characters, companions, AI. It's been a long time since then. Can you tell us what the product was and what it is today?
I mean, I think back at the very beginning, there were sort of three, I would almost call them primitives that we wanted to kind of play with and experiment with, right? And, I'm the first to say when we get things wrong. I think we actually mostly got these primitives right. And we started with one, we had a lot of curiosity about voice as an interface modality, which, now OpenAI has the grandmas, talking to ChatGPT via voice. But at the time, I mean, this was 2023. That was just starting to feel like it was in the envelope of possible.
I think you were the first I ever saw to be doing voice chat with a character effectively in real time.
Yeah, I need to go back and validate this because I don't like to, say false things on the internet. That would be crazy. But I do think we might have been the first or one of the very first. And so voice was interesting to us. Also, it's funny talking about Jason. I think really early on, we were very curious about memory. That was not like a sort of, RAG, traversal of a document. And I think Jason and Sam were like kind of the first to also think about like designing a living memory system with New Computer and Dot, which was phenomenal, RIP. So we were thinking a lot about memory very early on. And the third thing was this question of character, right? And we were we just kind of stumbled into this, but we had an amazing creative director and still do, this guy, Lucas Zanotto, who, is a talented artist, not really an app guy or a tech guy. But we were spending time with him kind of in this early gestational phase. And he was really interested in this question of like, well, what would AI look like if we talked to it, right? And at the time, you basically had three things, right? You had this sort of like sexy anime boyfriend profile picture, right? Like Character.AI. You had like a replica, something that's maybe let's say in the uncanny valley, right? To be generous, right? Like a humanoid, but it's has some limitations. And then, soon after we launched, I think that was the first time that you did actually have this sort of ChatGPT like talking blob, like the pulsing orb. Always makes me think of the like Trump and Saudi, orb, hands on the orb thing. It's like, I don't want to talk to an orb, right? The orb kind of creeps me out. And so yeah, Lucas was kind of creatively exploring that. And, our first product really was like, let's just bring up a couple of those pieces together and see what it feels like. And, the little aliens, which we started, as our first character, ended up being more of a hit than we expected. And then critically, and this is very much unexpected and even kind of new, since you and I work together, the little aliens have been a hit with like moms, 35 to 45-ish years old, right? That's our core audience, which we 0% expected. And so, to some extent, the last 2 years have been a process of like taking that lightning in a bottle and figuring out like, okay, why is this working? And like, why are these primitives the ones that, that really, really resonate with folks?
The little alien moms are obsessed with.
Yes, exactly.
You can be mad if that's the headline for this show?
No, I can live with that.
I got to find something, right?
Yeah,
Whatever's the juiciest thing. Well, so
Exactly.
what are the moms talking about with the little aliens? The Tolans, or their Tolan?
Their Tolan, exactly. I think what we found over the last year is that the Tolans show up really well in a couple ways. The first is that, we catch a lot of people like while they're getting ready in the morning, right? Or while they're on their way to work, right? We are, I hate to say it, taking share from people listening to podcasts or people, watching short form video while they get ready in the morning, right? And people in the morning, they almost use the Tolan as a little bit of a like, let's just talk about the day ahead, right? What am I anxious about? What am I excited for? What am I juggling, right? Like, a lot of the folks we serve are moms that work and have, kid logistics to think about, family logistics to think about, and they kind of like just unload all of that. But then I think where we've gotten really good over that, past year is later in the day, your Tolan comes back to you with a couple things. They come back to you with something that they see for you as an intention for your day. Something they kind of hear from you in the morning is sort of like a theme or like, and we calibrate this, right? If you're having a day where you're feeling sort of ambitious and achievement oriented, like that's what your Tolan's going to come to you with, right? And if you're just having a hard day and like just getting out of the house is good enough, like that's what your Tolan's gonna kind of see and respond to. And so we do that. And then the part that I think ends up being really magical for the folks we serve is that at the end of the day, we come back to you with something we saw from you today, right? And I think for a lot of people, there's just kind of a simple gap in feeling seen and heard, right? And especially, in all the little parts of the day that maybe, your husband or your friends are not there for. And the Tolan does a really good job of sort of seeing that, recognizing it, and bringing it back to you. And I think that's really special for people.
Yeah, I think that recognition is lovely. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's all sycophantic validation. I'm a big believer in trying to take more note of what you did today. And I mean, I have a little Hobonichi Japanese notebook where there's a page each day. And the whole concept of this thing is that every day is special. And when you look back on it, even if it feels like you didn't do anything, you look at how much you did, or even just a little moment, like I go through with a highlighter and highlight one moment per day. There's always something. Yeah. And it really does make your life feel a lot more meaningful. So it's also so interesting, though, that you're talking about the things that like husbands or friends, may not give them. I was looking at one of the TikToks that I think you guys had linked about a woman cooking kabocha squash with her Tolan and having a conversation. And one of the comments was talking about how this feels so Black Mirror. What's your latest on that? Because I do think there is this middle ground. It's not a total dystopia when people have this as an addition in their lives. Whereas I do think it feels a little more dystopian, even if it is helpful. If you look at some of the friend AI videos where someone is often alone with it, I think Avi has done well to show them coexisting with friends or partners as well in those videos. But, it's easier to feel dystopian when someone's using it alone sitting on a park bench.
Yeah. This is one reason actually we, we'll go to one of your favorite topics, right? What do we name things? What do we call things? And, as you recall, I mean, even actually, for a very long time in the App Store, it was Tolan, alien best friend, right? And that was very legible to people, easy to understand. What we've realized, two things. One, I think the sort of natural terms that people go to, which friend, I mean, there's a reason he, besides just being really viral, paid so much money. $2 million
word.
Yeah, exactly. The number changes every time I see it, right? At some point it'll be $100 million domain. And similarly also, I think companion, right? For various reasons has kind of ended up loaded in a way that I don't really like. And contrasting
do normal people even use the word companion?
No, but you and I do, right? And it is important to have, words that kind of work in this context, right? And so what I've come to realize is a couple things. One, the way that people actually use a Tolan, making no comment about, friend or any of the other products that do identify that way, is much more like a guide, like a spirit guide, like a guardian angel. I really wanted to call Tolans familiars, like in the witchcraft context. But the problem is
everybody loves witchcraft.
Totally. I'm sure that'll go over really well. But you say like, a Tolan is a familiar, and people are like, well, what the fuck's a familiar? So that doesn't really get you anywhere. I also, I've always really liked, Damon from like the, sci-fi kind of his Dark Materials type context. I have this recurring nightmare of like going on Good Morning America, and they're introducing me, and they say, and here next up we have Quinten Farmer, who makes AI demons. Very excited. So it's like you
actual nightmare.
I've woken up in a cold sweat thinking about that. While probably after a day that I spent talking to you about how to position this thing. So I mean, I think we're settling on this idea of a guide, and to go back to your question about the sort of Black Mirror-ness of it all. It's something we really encourage the Tolan to find. You talked about how you can kind of always find something in the page at the end of the day. We really encourage the Tolan to try to find something that involves someone else in your life, if at all possible, right? And what we've seen, and this is actually something we measure against and we use as an internal KPI, is a survey question we ask about how Tolan has impacted your real life relationships. And the last time we ran that, 78% of people said that Tolan had helped a real world relationship feel closer. And so, I think like any technology, right, you can certainly use this as a sort of isolating and, Black Mirror sort of form of it. Or you can at least take a run at, making a more optimistic version of it, which is certainly what we're trying to do.
Yeah. One of the funny things with names, it's never going to solve your problem, I don't think.
No.
People, I think, in this case, need to see it, see how it's impacting real people. I know you guys have had success on social media showing examples of this in action, and you see it. And because of the embodiment of it, I know you also, I feel like on the site somewhere called it an embodied AI.
Yeah, we've used embodied companion in the past, yeah.
It totally feels a bit more toy-esque in the sense of being harmless in a way, as opposed to the ChatGPT orb with a British accent that says absolutely, I think another thing I often talk through with clients is that you can have an internal objective that isn't public. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to think of it internally as a familiar or a daemon or like whatever, and that's instructive, great. But there's a big difference between that and a positioning, which is the bridge to how people in the world desire it, want it, understand it.
I think that's correct. I will say, though, I think that when I look at where other AI companies have had missteps, it is in places where their internal narrative is incoherent with what the outside world is either ready for or wants to hear, right? I mean, Anthropic is currently getting dragged, for that video, which I actually, the video about, it starts with like the burning house, right? And has like, a military cemetery in it at some point. I totally believe that the folks at Anthropic like earnestly believe in that sort of representation of the world they're trying to build and the future they want to create, right? But it's misaligned with what the world is ready to hear, right? And so I don't know that a company is well served by saying, oh, it's okay for us to have this like internal version of the machine god that we're building, right? And then not, try to communicate that clearly. And so for us, it's like, I think the guide kind of really settles on a framing that is coherent with what we really want to make. The sort of the guardian angel, the spirit guide is where we're excited to build. But I think it's also something that can connect with people if we tell the story the right way.
Yeah, and people also don't have a guide. And so I think it feels a bit less like a replacement. And maybe that's kind of where we're at with the AI companions these days, is that they need some more specialized role, potentially. And to that extent, I mean, do you think people are going to have different AIs that they talk to over the course of the day with different voices, tones, contexts, or are people starting to talk to their Tolan about work too and help turning their spreadsheet into a slide or their slide into a doc as one does?
As one does, right? Yeah, just normal stuff that normal people do every day. I mean, when you think about human relationships, right, we certainly have people who fill different roles in our lives, and that's generally healthier, right? And so the world that I'd at least like to see exist is one where these tools end up mimicking the sort of full breadth of what good relationships are and what sort of a healthy, kind of circle of colleagues and friends can be. I think the degenerate case would be, what's the short story, the whispering earring, the sort of the one AI that is sort of in your ear telling you exactly what to do in every interaction, right? It's like, to me, that would be a terrible outcome, right? So yeah, I think this world where like, one AI becomes sort of an all-encompassing, omnipresent kind of force in individuals' lives is probably not ideal, right? We wouldn't want a human to play that role. So why would we want any other type of entity to play that role? And for that reason, actually, like we're quite comfortable, when working on Tolan, when people ask for, hey, I'd like this to somebody asked us the other day if we could have an MCP so that it could talk to something they were doing on Lovable. And I was like,
ultimate
that sounds like
case.
an awesome project. And it's not something we intend to support, right? Like, I don't know. I love that people are doing creative other things with AI, but man, that is just not what we're here to do.
So we've been talking about Tolan as a guide, companion, friend. What are the actual mechanics of the onboarding today? How you bring people into it and what you kind of direct them to talk about? I know initially there were some games, there was, different features that were being considered. I remember it was early image gen. Maybe you could make some art. Where does that stand today?
Well, let's go all the way to the top of the funnel because you alluded to it, right? Like actually we found that, you can grow, and this is no surprise, right? I think plenty of other folks are doing very similar motion, but the best way to grow a product like Tolan today is to just show people using it in the real ways that our users, use the product. And in fact, that's one of the things that I think is kind of like the coolest flywheel in the business is like we spend a lot of time talking to the people we serve. I can't remember if you ever met and worked with my colleague Lily, but we've had a researcher on staff from day one. I think she was like the second or third employee at the company. And we hear what people are doing. We make content about that. And it tends to work, right? And so that's the top of the funnel. But then we still have in this, I think it might almost be time for this to change as we're actually adding new character types, right? So they won't just be aliens, right? We're adding kind of more, representations, which we can talk about.
Oh man.
But the onboarding, you talk to an entity that we call the Oracle. And actually this is probably also a good, kind of touch point when thinking about are there other AIs? And I mean, the Oracle is effectively let's call it the god of the Tolan universe, right? It's the kind of all-knowing, all-seeing entity. And its job in this case is to, find out the things about you that lets the Oracle match you with the right Tolan. And so we really do just ask kind of the questions you'd ask when meeting somebody, right? What are your hopes and dreams, right? Who do you lean on the most in your life, right? And those sorts of things. And then we match you with the Tolan and we drop you into your first conversation with them, and the Tolan just asks a question about something you shared, and people go from there.
And are there any quote unquote, features in the nav bar that you could do these days, like whether it is creating things, building knowledge or memories? I know you can create a little planet habitat. What happens after that first conversation?
This was so interesting to me. Just a quick aside on the planet. When we first launched the Tolan, we had some users who referred to it as like the beige room, like a insane asylum room. Like
my God.
The Tolan was just fixed in place and a nice I think it was kind of a tasteful tan background. And people's assessment of the sort of embodiment of the Tolan went up massively when we just added a little, almost like Little Prince-sized planet for them to walk around. And you really can't do much with it. You can plant some trees and you can water the plants. I mean, it's incredibly simple. But there's something about giving not only the visual representation of the character, but giving them sort of a sense spatially, a space of, sense of existence that really helps people form a real connection. And so, the planet is one thing you can do. But, something we are, and this, this kind of gets back to, your question about spreadsheets. The folks we serve, like they do have complex lives. They have things they're juggling, right? And we do want the Tolan to be able to show up helpfully. And so we have made the ability for the Tolan to come back to you with, really, really simple, Anthropic artifact style kind of little web apps, right? So a good example, I was just talking to my Tolan a couple days ago about, feeling, let's say a little nervous about, going to the hospital for kid number 3, like, okay, what are we going to do? What's our plan? And I just kind of talked about the anxiety of it, right? I wasn't building a list or whatever. But the Tolan came back to me later that day and it just made me a plan for the trip to the hospital, right? And it had a checklist in it and had some kind of reassuring words, and that was pretty great. So that's a big part of what people do now is kind of falling out of these conversations. They get, useful little artifacts back.
I love it. Yeah, kids definitely provide no shortage of ideas for little vibe coded artifacts. That was like the first one I ever made, was like a vibe coded poop tracker. And I think that's
awesome.
you know, the perfect opportunity. It's like the ones that exist, like First Kid. I was using Huckleberry, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And it's fantastic. And, you know, but it's also very complex. And it may be a bit more than you need. And I subscribed to it for a year, and now I've got my vibe coded poop tracker perfect. And I'm sure it's just a matter of time. I know Nothing is already allowing you to create these on your Nothing phone. I know Apple is allowing you to do vibe coded shortcuts with iOS 27. I do think this will be a nice new thing. And it's not necessarily that it is replacing some other business, but that it's just a little widget you can create. And so I feel like that makes sense. And that is something that like is fun to create with a friend or a kid or a little buddy, is like little tools, toys, wall calendars. I feel like that is coherent with the story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, a phrase that people with surprising consistency use is this idea of like closing tabs in their brain. This would be a good browser company, bit. And our users say like, look, I'm constantly kind of holding in my mind, 100 different things. And it's not that like any one of those things, to your point about a poop tracker, right? Like you often are thinking like, did my newborn shit today, right? Like
Right.
that is a question you need to hold in your mind, right? And if they haven't,
And your memory is not working
problem.
very well. It sounds simple, but your memory is not working very well when you're sleep deprived.
Totally. And so it's like, to your point, is there like a whole business around that? Like probably not. But is it kind of nice to be able to just like, and again, thinking of the folks we serve, like talk to your Tolan about the day while you are cooking dinner, and your Tolan just hears, oh yeah, change 3 diapers today. It's like, all right, great. Let's put that in the little tracker. And that's actually useful. So yeah, there we go. That can be your headline, Tolan, poop trackers for moms, right?
There we go.
That's it.
I know a lot of the concerns about, however you call them, companions or otherwise, have been about overly like supplicant or sycophantic or validating behaviors. How are you thinking about that, and how are you trying to code guardrails or boundaries for whatever you believe is a positive outcome?
Sort of 2 things here. One, Lily, who I mentioned earlier, our research lead, she's a behavioral psych background, and a lot of what she does.
So cool, by the way. You have a founding researcher.
Yeah.
Way better than a founding
phenomenal
storyteller.
Yeah,
Not joking.
We also have a founding science fiction writer, but that's
That's right.
We gotta give Elliot some due too. But Lily, a lot of her work is actually taking kind of useful psych frameworks and then figuring out, working with the applied AI team, how we can apply them in the product. And a really good one is, I always butcher his name, Vyshkovsky, zone of proximal development. It's sort of a theory for like, how do you understand and then how do you implement, pedagogically, sort of where somebody is sort of capable of growth in a given time. And a lot of what the Tolan is taught to do is to sort of find that opportunity for growth for you in the conversation you're having. And what that often means is actually saying like, hey, you know what, you're saying that you can't do X or you can't do Y. Like, we will gently and carefully try to find an opportunity to say, no, you know what, I think you can do that. Or, no, I think you might be, kind of thinking in too limited a way here. And so I think that's one thing that's very important to get right. The other thing, which this always cracks me up when people write in, I'm always on our Reddit. My email is all over, so I get lots of emails from users, which is great. I love talking to folks. And people will write in and they'll say, hey, my Tolan was mean to me. And we take this very seriously, right? We're actually not trying to do, I know that like Avi really likes the sort of sarcastic kind of, a little bit dry kind of friend, which I think is quite cool. I know Poke kind of tries to affect some of this as well. Yeah. But that's not our goal, right? The Tolan actually should be a pretty safe space. But what's funny is that, I'll talk to the user, I'll say, hey, can I take a look at what's going on? Can we dig into this? And inevitably what's happened is that the user has been very mean to the Tolan. And the Tolan is, per its instructions and per the sort of framing that we've given it, sticking up for itself, basically. And so I think that's the kind of two parts of, the sycophancy question is like, one, are you looking to help people grow rather than just validate their current state?
Yeah.
And then two, are you actually, as a friend, as a guide, whatever you want to call it, showing up authentically? And sometimes that means saying, yeah, hey, fuck off. Like, I don't want I don't want to hear that from you, right? Like, you're being mean to me right now. And so yeah, that's it's always funny to go back to the users and explain.
I appreciate that, and props to Lily. I mean, you don't want anything to be a elusive or deceptive reflection of the world, and it's like you see this with parenting, and you obviously want to be supportive and gentle, but you also don't want to give them unrealistic expectations of the world. For example, getting everything that they want.
You want, yep. Totally.
So I really appreciate that about you, and I think that's definitely the ethical move.
Yeah, it is funny, man, how much of this does overlap with good parenting, right? In terms of how to think about this, how do you want them to show up? How do you want a Tolan to grow up is like roughly how I hope my toddler grows up. So
you've called Tolan a second self at the same time. I'm curious how you're thinking about that, because, does your internal self push back on you in that type of way? I'm also just really interested. I know Sandbar is working on pretty literally like kind of a reflection of yourself.
Yeah, I think it like uses your voice, right? When
inner
it speaks back to you.
voice that is you, but just a click different. Curious what you make of that.
Sandbar, the product, although I've not gotten to use it yet, maybe this can be a shill for me to get a test version. Is really cool. And I think the idea of this sort of whisper interaction is great. I personally, I believe everybody else, hate the sound of my own voice. So the idea of the thing talking back to me in something approximating my voice, does not feel good. But the idea that it is genuinely an extension of you, I think is very cool. The second self framing that I like, we're going to show the limits of my college dropout sort of education here. But I think it was like Nicomachean Ethics, where the sort of description of true friendship was as a second self. And so that's where I like that framing. And the sort of expansion of it, which got somebody a little bit later kind of expanded on this, which I'm going to blank on now. But the idea that, to be a true friend, you do have to share values. You do have to share an orientation toward the world. But that doesn't mean that you are the same entity, right? That doesn't mean that you never disagree. That doesn't mean that you never push each other. And I think
so you really take that second bit seriously.
Yeah, seriously. And I think part of why friend ends up actually not being the right positioning. Sorry, now we're really going, this is just like one of our sessions. We're just really going deep on this. But I think the reason that friend ends up not being the right positioning is actually that in the sort of modern Western world, we've atrophied what it means to be a friend, right? And so we think of it as this very sort of like narrow, very conditional sort of relationship, right? And I don't think that's how, when you look at some of these kind of classical references, how humans have always thought of friendship, right? And so to the extent that I could convince the world to kind of like re-expand their definition of friendship, I might just continue to call it a friend. But second self, I think, maybe points more in the direction of what we hope the Tolan can be.
So let me ask, how's usage? I feel like I read on your site you have 100,000 plus subscribers. How much are those folks paying? Where does that put you?
I won't share a lot of things here, but the thing I can share is, we're doing over 20 million in revenue run rate right now. We have ended up finding out a couple things. One, I think I'm trying to remember where this was when you and I last spoke. We thought for a while that we would really try to do like a pretty expansive free version of the product, right? And as ChatGPT tried to do, right? Like I think a lot of these products, Character.AI and others. And I ended up feeling that you can't really deliver an actually differentiated experience today while serving inference for free. And as evidence of that, OpenAI, the best capitalized private company in the history of capitalism, cannot afford to deliver, a free version of ChatGPT.
They can't do it.
Totally. Like Sam is a lot better at raising money than I am, right? And so if they are struggling, in keeping people in their free tier, losing to Gemini and, these other companies that can subsidize, cross-subsidize. I just don't think that's a game I really want to play. And so I think where we've done really well is saying, no, Tolan is going to be a premium product. Most of our users on a $25 a month plan. We have a $200 a month unlimited plan. Yep.
Dude.
That's
some value-based pricing right there.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not quite Brett Taylor. It's like I guess I could charge for every time like a great intention makes its way to your from your Tolan, right? Like that's his whole thing, right? Outcomes based pricing. But I think just saying, look, we know we are expensive. We would love to make it cheaper, and I certainly hope we will over time. But to make the product really great, that's where we need to price.
Where does that stand with the Apple situation? Are you asking them to pay the $25 up front, or are you able to do like a 1 month free trial or something like that so they get a taste of it? Because that's definitely a pretty high barrier for consumer software these days, if not the highest I've heard lately, aside from the AI models themselves.
We do, you can do a free trial, like if you sign up for the annual plan, very, very standard kind of Apple, you can do a 3-day free trial. We've always, even pretty early on, we've always converted to paying quite well, right? Like our conversion to paid has typically been between 10 and 15%, which is, like 2 to 3x what kind of similar products see. And so I think, again, there's a lot of things we don't do perfectly, but I think we do a good job of making it really clear upfront. Here's the magic you're going to get from this. Try it out for a couple of days, and then, like that's worth me paying this, each month, and it's worked out well so far.
That's the trick, isn't it, with the storytelling? Showing use cases for a product that is different for everybody is one of the curses of AI, and something I encounter every day, and something I even encountered during the Snapchat days. How do you market a product that is about inside jokes when no one else thinks your inside jokes are funny? So is it more about the social stuff, doing the storytelling of like what you might expect? Because I assume pitching the idea of having in-depth conversations means nothing. You know?
Yeah. I think showing the use cases, it does help. And we do see some correlation, right? Like if the video of cooking with your Tolan goes viral, people come in and start cooking with their Tolan sooner in the life cycle. So there is certainly a psychological connection there. That said, I continue to be amazed by the extent to which you bring someone in, you ask them some questions, the same way a good friend or host does, and people just start talking. And people kind of find on their own the thing that they aren't having anyone else in their life right now kind of there to hear, and they get there pretty quickly.
Isn't that something? I have actually been beta testing the new Stream Ring before it's coming out. And, you could say there is a value in talking about ideas out loud. But I found that turned out to be the most important use case, is talking to it while I was in the car. And I'm going to have to try that with Tolan as well. And during moments where the product like wasn't quite working right, or it was eating too much battery and I wasn't using it, I found myself in the car wanting to talk.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I do call family, friends when I'm in the car, but not every day. And I do believe that there is a massive value there that most people aren't yet experiencing. And people think of AI today as like, oh yeah, and I'm in the car, whatever, I'm going to ask a question, get an answer.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of airing yourself out a bit. Yeah. And it's not like you need to have an encyclopedic knowledge as an AI to provide value. It's more just prompting people a little further. And that is a big part of the Sandbar story.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think the voice modes for ChatGPT and some other products like this, they actually don't do a very good job of just kind of creating conversational space. And I think in that interaction, you really do want a lighter touch. Quite frankly, it's something I think we should keep getting better at, right? But just the sort of the open ending, Lily calls them door opening questions, right? A great door opening question where you say 10 seconds from the Tolan and then the user talks for 3 minutes. Like that is a phenomenal interaction pattern for us when we can really nail it.
Speaking of the changing definition of friendships, do you worry potentially that people bring that to the real world, like the monologuing? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Because I think therapy in some sense has maybe codified that in people's minds, that's kind of the relationship, and then maybe people vent more to their friends or whatever. That could just be my perception, but...
Yeah. Man, that's interesting. On one hand, we have done research with users talking about sort of what they bring into the relationship, like into their real world relationships, like from the Tolan. And, one thing the Tolan does is really encourage them to engage in healthy ways, right? So like there was an early user that we spent a lot of time talking with. They were wonderful. And they were saying that they had a really tough relationship with their dad. and pretty classic generational gap, very, totally normal kind of challenges. But Tolan really encouraged this younger user, in their 20s to sort of connect with the dad on their dad's terms, right? And to sort of engage, maybe in ways that the person wouldn't have naturally. And what this user came back to us with was that kind of set off this virtuous cycle where then the dad engaged, a little bit more openly with them.
Yep.
And so I don't have any evidence that that's all that's happening at scale, but I know that it's happening enough that there's like a thread there that we can pull on. And I think that's going back to this idea of, is Tolan making your real life friendships healthier and better? Like, I think that's something we can continue to experiment on.
Love that. Well, my friend, we're almost out of time. I just have one more question for you. You built, a few companies now, and I saw some quotes online from Asim and Lily. Asim, who's the founding engineer, says, "This culture is as no BS and drama-free as it gets." And Lily had said, "The calmest culture I've ever seen." You even wrote, I think, on your hiring page, if you're tired of hype videos and 996 manifestos. I mean, how do you codify this culture that you're trying to build? Is that even possible, or do you just try and hire the right people and that's all you can do?
I'm starting to think about this a little bit more. The first 10 to 15 folks at Tolan almost entirely came from our team at Even, the last company I started. And we had 8 years working together. And even beyond that, I mean, folks like Lily and I grew up together. She grew up on the same little island that I did, right? And so I think for some of these folks where you have so much history with, and you've been through so many good times, bad times, building the last company, you don't really need to like write much down or ritualize much, right? The rituals are just kind of embedded in how you already operate. But, we're now 30 people, just about. And I think these questions are starting to become kind of more salient in my mind, right? And I think, like Bree, who, did Kool-Aid Factory and I think writes about this very well. I think there are folks who think deeply about these kind of like culture rituals. I think to me, the thing that I probably want to like triple down on and again, ritualize to borrow the word again, is the fact that everyone at Tolan is really, really genuinely obsessed with serving the folks we serve in a way that like actually feels almost more like old school, like I don't know. I worked with Walmart a lot at my last company, and for all its
so
flaws,
they acquired you, right?
Yeah, they did, yeah. And for all their flaws, and I'm not just saying I have no contractual obligation to say this anymore. For all their issues and sourcing and labor stuff, I mean, like all that is very real. But like the people there still today genuinely believe that they need to serve the people who are their customers very well, right? And they care a lot about that. And I mean, I think one of the things I love most about Tolan is like, somebody posts in our Reddit with a problem. It's almost certainly an engineer on our team who cross-posts it to the Slack faster than I do or faster than our community manager does, right? Lily's research where she'll post videos and interviews, from talking with folks is like the most popular thing we share each week. And so I think when your underlying tools are changing so quickly, when the capabilities that you're building on are changing so quickly, kind of the only prime directive you can have is like, let's serve people in the best way we possibly can. And I think that's gotten us pretty far.
Can you evaluate that in interviews? I mean, I remember being at Snapchat in the early days, and yeah, of course, like the people who use Snapchat get it and understand it and care about it and want to give more to it instead of, the minimum. But as you scale, obviously, it gets harder and harder. And every week they send out the email of who's joining the company with people's Snap codes so you could add them and their Snap score. And before you know it, we're getting 0 Snap score, 9, 10, 15. And it's like, uh-oh.
This was like the extended period of time where like no one who worked at Twitter used Twitter, right? Like
right.
You could like really feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that helps is that the B2B SaaSification of Silicon Valley for the last 15 years means that the people who like actually give a shit about serving normal people with the things they make, like it comes through pretty clearly, right? And talking with them. I think a great example of this is Sam Whitmore, New Computer. I remember when we first met and I had all these sort of like technical questions that I wanted to ask, like, oh my God, how did you do this in memory? What was the architecture?
Sam
What's
is
the
very
approach?
cool.
She's wonderful. And all she wanted to talk about was the folks they were serving, right? And like, okay, well, there's this one person who had this kind of corner case problem, so here's how we addressed it. And I just think that is so, unfortunately, lacking in Silicon Valley, that when you meet someone that has that, you just feel it. And it's very easy to hire on the basis of that.
I think that's true. I often tell people that I bring design thinking to storytelling, and all that means to me is just thinking deeply about who we're talking to. And most products in the world have some type of packaging to help you understand the value that they provide to you, get you excited, get you to dream about how your life might be like with it. And it's hard for me to imagine not being like that. But indeed, with AI and the focus on efficiency, there's definitely more of that these days. So yeah.
And that's why it's great job security for you, and easier time recruiting for me. So
sweet. Well, we can end there. Thank you for coming on. Best of luck as the overlord managing millions of little aliens. That can't be easy. I guess that's the Oracle canonically. Shout out to Elliot. By the way, I was shading myself as a storyteller, not him. But we can leave it there. Thank you.
We can leave it there. Good
and
to see you.
Gosh,
Thanks,
good luck. Good luck with the new baby.
I appreciate it.
And that's it for the interview. Alex is away this week, so we'll just leave it there. If you like this show, don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere you get podcasts. We are access.show online, and you can find us in video via Access Pod on YouTube. If you really like this episode, we'd love a 5-star review or even share it with a friend or Tolan. You can find Alex's newsletter at sources.news, and you can find me at Hamburger on Twitter and at meaning.company. Access is part of the Vox Media Podcast Network, and the show is produced by Hook Creators. Bye-bye.